Straight to our main speaker for tonight. So can you please put your hands together for Ann Lindsey?
Thank you very much, and thank you very much everyone for coming. It's State of Origin night. Well, I'm talking tonight about breeding black-necked storks, particularly in the Hunter Estuary. There was a time when we did not have very many black-necked storks at all in the whole of the Hunter region. Very occasionally they turned up. There was always perhaps one floating around out there in Hexham. But anyway, my talk, you will probably know that black-necked storks are actually listed as endangered in New South Wales, which makes them a bit special. And a bird that we actually have to particularly look after. So we've also had several records of them from places like Gloucester, Lake Macquarie, recently out at Thornton there were some birds as well. And there's still not a large amount of information about black-necked storks in the literature. Greg Clancy did his PhD on them several years ago. But you know, since then there's not a lot being published that I could find anyway. I mean, as you know, the stork here in Australia is a subspecies. It's also found over Southeast Asia and particularly in India. All right, as you'll come to realise, these birds are not only beautiful, they are absolutely dedicated parents. Okay, so my story with, here we go with this. My story with black-necked storks started out there in Tomago in 2017 when I spent 64 hours and 40 minutes, I think, standing on the side of Tomago Road watching these storks through a telescope and my binoculars. And I had asked for permission to cross the land to get a bit closer to them, but permission was denied. So this photograph here is the only time I actually saw those birds displaying, and in all that time, like, you know, I must have spent over 2 years out there then, and it just happened to be the day that Alan Stewart was there, I think, weren't you, on that day, and with Ken Gospel, and they put on this wonderful demonstration of greeting each other. So through actually looking, remember I'm doing this from at least 400 metres away, so I was on the phone all the time to Greg Clancy, who'd done his PhD. They're doing this, Greg, they're looking down in the nest now, what are they doing, what are they doing? So I managed to ascertain when, through the behaviour, when there was probably a chick in the nest. I figured out that they were probably rolling eggs at various stages, but then their behaviour changed and they started bringing in water, and then I saw them bring in food, and I thought, oh well, there's got to be a chick. And so I managed to get myself into a position and actually could see a tiny chick actually in the nest. Is Gary Tom here tonight? Because I think Gary was with me on that day that we actually established that there was a chick in the nest. So that was important to actually know that there was a chick in this nest at this time. So I was actually able to ascertain how long the incubation period was and how long the nesting phase probably was, as much as I could tell. And what I actually deduced was that probably what I did deduce was more or less in line with what was written in the literature. So that was a good thing. The other thing that that happened with that particular chick, which is a completely different story that I won't go into now, but it actually became very ill, and we captured it and it went into care. And then it was banded and it was released, and that chick's name's Yellow Boo because of the bands. And one of the things that we were probably able to establish is that that bird was a female because the iris which is black in the chicks and in the male, but in the female it turns into that bright yellow colour. And that's not actually written up in the literature that I could find when that change in the iris colour actually happens, but it's probably at about 2 years old, we think. So, as I said, so the more and more excited I became, and I really wanted to see the chick. I'd watched it so long, I actually wanted to see it leave the nest, and I went out there every day at the crack of dawn, and indeed I was there when that bird actually, I was just looking at it on the nest, and it was doing its usual stuff, you know, jumping up and down, jumping up and down, and I just turned around and I looked back and I saw it just glide off the nest, and it rose and it circled around 3 times over my head, crossed over the dreaded power lines. All those birds have to negotiate two lines of probably 2 lots of power lines, and it landed in with the horses. So there it is. So it stayed in that horse paddock for a week, and we saw it at that stage. Lena, who's doing the video tonight, was out there with me towards the end, and she took amazing videos. And we would watch that stork out in the horse paddock. The parents would come in, bring eel in, and the chick would often take the eel out of the bill of the adults, also not written down in the literature, or drop it on the ground, and the chick would then pick it up. So, presumably the same pair bred again in 2018, and they had 1 chick, and I know that actually left the nest, so that could be counted also as the second confirmed breeding event for the Hunter Estuary. So that was kind of important. Hitherto, the only confirmed breeding records were up at Bulladila, was the most southern place for a confirmed breeding record, and we actually brought it further south to make the Hunter region, the Hunter Estuary, the breeding place for storks. So now, you know, when I say confirmed breeding record, to have a confirmed breeding record, you actually need either stand or chick or whatever. And although there have been many sightings, or a few sightings anyway, of storks down at Hexham, there were sightings down at Central Coast at the Pioneer Dairy. They were always saying they had breeding black-necked storks down there, and they probably did. They certainly had adults with chicks, but nobody has to this day ever found where that nest is. So maybe one day somebody will find it. So over the years, as I've already said, there have been many reports from Hexham Swine, and I was out there just drifting around it, well, you know, just looking around with the telescope, and suddenly I saw this black-necked stork go to a tree, a branch, and so there it is there. I think I've circled it. Can you see that on there? Yeah, good. So that's, I think the photo's taken from Cullen Avenue, maybe. The one, maybe Cullen Avenue. And so again, I spent many, many hours out there looking for the stork through the telescope. However, I had a friend who had a drone, and I asked him if he would fly his drone out there, which he did. And he established that there was a male bird, I think it was, actually sitting on the nest. So, I hadn't been out there, I've only been out there a couple of times when I noticed that the adult was actually eating food out of the nest, which is what they do. They come in and drop some food, and then if the food's not eaten or something, the adults then eat it themselves. But nevertheless, it was almost a sure sign of a chick being in the nest. So on the 26th of August that year, again, we launched the drone and there were 2 tiny chicks in the nest. So the pictures from the drone were younger than that, so that's when got Rob Kite and Greg Little and various other people became very interested in the storks. And Greg and Rob in September walked out to the nest and saw the 2 chooks looking well healthy and they were growing. And so with the help from Greg Clancy again, we estimated that their age was about 4 weeks. And because so little's known about storks, we decided, Greg and Rob and Greg decided to ban them. So Greg Clancy came down from where he lives up on the north coast and taught Greg and Rob how to ban storks and banded them. I wish I'd stopped shaking. So they were banded in October. They were a bit bigger. Okay, so that's in October, and there they are in October. Amazing photo that Greg Little took. Apparently, I think they came up with stork. Right, okay. So these chicks were banded. So this was the third confirmed breeding event in the Hunter Estuary. And those chicks probably left the nest by the 1st of November of that year, and they were never sighted again. So none of you ever found those storks with the bands on. We never seen again, so we don't know whether they survived or not. But it was the 3rd confirmed breeding event for the Hunter Estuary. So the nest was in a Melaleuca. Here we go. Let's have a look at Rob. Now, Greg, Rob, and Greg Clancy, of course, are A-class banders, registered and able to do what's necessary. So the nest was in a Melaleuca linearifolia. There it is there. I think it's a linearifolia, don't hold me to that. After those birds had left, that nest was very unstable. It fell apart over the next year. So in 2021, that was 2020, the storks bred again, this time choosing a different Melaleuca tree in which to build a nest. 2 young birds were banded in November, but unfortunately they followed a week. Here we go. That's the different nesting site. They followed a week of really, truly terrible rain, and the nest collapsed. And photographs taken with the drone confirmed that the nest was sitting on the ground, but it was above water level, but there was only 1 chick. Greg and Rob walked out there again and lifted the nest back into place, stabilised the tree with ropes, and it is likely so 1 chick was lost, but it's likely the one that survived fledged in December. And like the 2020 chicks, never seen again. So that was the 4th confirmed breeding event for the Hunter. Now let's have a look at what we've got here. Okay, so these are Greg and Rob out there banding and taking photos. Is that yeah. Right, so this must have been the one where, so they bred again, and as I said, chose a different tree. This must be the 2021. I'll get them muddled up. I tell you, it's so confusing. This is the one with the chick on the ground, and they put it back up, and that's the chick that we never saw again. So then they bred again. Right, this is now 2022. They chose this time a completely different tree, a casuarina, in which to build a nest, and 5 eggs were laid, which is very unusual, not unknown, but unusual. And then in October, 2 tiny chicks were visible. I wish I'd stop shaking. Hang on, so there's the adult with 5 eggs. You can see the female. The female is really easy. Once you get tuned into that yellow iris, you can see that yellow iris even from quite a long way. So that's that with her 5 eggs. What a woman. And then there's another photograph of it with 2 chicks. Can you see the 2 chicks? Yeah. And 2 or 3 still there. So in December, the chicks had really grown, and Rob and Greg walked out to ban them, but unfortunately when they appeared, the chicks flew off the nest. And but however, that was disappointing to have missed the opportunity to ban the chicks. So, but in January 2023, several people reported adults with an immature foraging in Hexham, and so maybe either one or both chicks had survived. And then in October 2023, which is later, Paul, I don't know if Paul's here tonight, he photographed adults with a chick in Hexham Swamp, probably that chick. And then much later, like a year later or so, there's that photograph of isn't that a gorgeous photo of that bird out of Cliff Lee. So that could be one of those. We'll never know. It's the advantage of banding, you actually know. All right, so I'm thinking, and other people are thinking, that this female must be exhausted. She must take a break from breeding again in 2023. She may have, just reckoning it up roughly, so she must have produced as many as 17 eggs since 2020, plus shared, because the male feeds chicks too, so she shared in the feeding of providing food for perhaps 5 chicks. So that's, quite an effort. Not so, because in July the adults were attending the nest again, and in August 2023, 2 very young chicks were in the nest along with a single egg. So here we go, this is 2023, so there's the female sitting, the adult standing on the nest. And here we've got chicks at 3 to 4 weeks time. Now, I might say it now while I'm thinking of it, one of the big advantages of out at Hexham was that we had the drone, because Hunter Bird Club has some drones, and now we have trained drone pilots. So that this is why just flying the drone out, we could actually get tremendous views of what was actually, instead of having to guess what the hell was going on in the nest, we could actually see what was happening. So that was pretty amazing. So here we go again. So these chicks were banded in early October, and all seemed to be going well. But then the next time that we flew the drone out, the chicks were on the ground. And so you can see how the nest was sloping. Maybe in the next slide. There it is. See how the nest is sloping. Anyway, Greg and Rob put the chicks back in the nest, but once again, the huge winds came, blown out of the nest, and by the end of several days of atrocious weather, there was one on the ground and it was dead. So what happened was they put the chicks back, but one was blown out again, and we saw it with the drone, and we saw it was alive, but then it died. So it's thought that the remaining chick fledged on there's the poor little dead thing on the ground. So this bird had a band on each leg, a pink band and a yellow band, and it was called Pillow, and it seemed to survive and was alive and well, and we saw it left there it is, because we don't know whether it's a male or female, standing on the nest, and I don't know, you can't see the bands very well in that photo, but they are there. And then in November, the bird was seen in the swamp with its parents, and then also in January 24, Paul took this amazing photo of the bird flying. You can probably see the bands there. So far as I'm aware, Pillow hasn't been sighted again. Haven't seen that bird. So did I mention that storks are determined and dedicated parents? So it was hard to believe that they would actually breed again in 2024. Not only did they breed again, they made 4 attempts at breeding in 2024, and only the last one was successful. So they were using the same unstable nest in the casuarina walker. So in June, a male was seen several times attending the nest, and then on the 21st of June, there were 4 eggs in the nest. And then in July, again after strong winds, cold and rain, I mean the weather was dreadful, and Hexham Swamp is really exposed, you know. The nest was empty. Oh well, that'll be it for the year, we said. But by the 1st of August, 2 adults were attending the nest again and were sitting tightly for long periods, a sure sign that eggs must be in the nest. So they continued to attend the nest, and then in September there were gale force winds all along the east coast, and we feared the worst. And sure enough, a drone flight confirmed that the nest was on the ground. So we didn't know whether this nest had chicks or not, but we believed that at least it would have contained eggs. Well, we couldn't believe it again when the adults started to refurbish the nest all through October. And this was the 4th attempt for this 2024. So here they are, and they actually managed to produce, so there were 3 eggs, and then there were 3 chicks. That's right, there were 3 chicks still present, and they were growing strongly. The adults were seen bringing in eel and other fish, and also regurgitating water over the chicks, which they do, so the chicks can either have a drink, or if it's very hot, they'll often regurgitate water. So then in January, there were only 2 chicks were in the nest, and despite a search, the 3rd chick couldn't be located. But later, we did find the 3rd one. It was on the ground. I'm not sure if I have a slide there. No. It was on the ground, and it subsequently died. So presumably, we could establish that the adults would not feed a bird that had slipped from the nest onto the ground. So these birds because the time had got away, and not everybody has all the time in the world to go out banding chicks, and they Greg and Rob decided that they probably had grown too much, and that they were afraid that if they went out there, they might also take off the nest, maybe get stuck in all of the reeds that are out there and not be able to get them. So that they decided that that year that those ones that wouldn't get banded. They had bred again. Yeah, this was the 4th breeding attempt, that's right. And this is the last photograph of them on the nest, taken by Steph from the pipeline trap. And then this is the bird, the birds that were seen then in April this year. So that's really good. They're out there surviving, looking terrific. There's another one taken out there on June, still looking terrific. And then Bastian was out there yesterday and saw them again. So there they are. That was only yesterday. They're taken from a very long way away. So that was actually the 7th confirmed breeding record for the Hunter Estuary. Now, as I said before, unlike with the Tomago study, I didn't have the advantage of the drone, and the drones made all the difference to see what was happening in the nest. So now we come to the next bit of exciting happenings with storks. Some of us, 8 of us, were in Japan in 2023. And we saw artificial nest platforms in various swamps, but were put there to provide a breeding site for oriental storks because wetlands are pretty rare in Japan. Well, suitable wetlands. So the provision of such platforms is widely used in Southeast Asia, and it is actually used now as a conservation measure. They purposely put platforms there so that the birds have somewhere to breed. So, in view of the lack of stable trees in Hexham Swamp, we wondered whether we could actually install an artificial nest platform out at Hexham and for our birds to use, since they're such determined breeders. So anyway, I quickly put a proposal together and presented it to the Hunter Local Land Services and National Parks in late 2023. And much to our surprise, both of the agencies actually jumped at the chance to carry on with this project. National Parks wanted to do it because they said we never have anything positive to do. we're always, you know. And Hunter Local Land Services always has lots of money. So it was really wonderful because Hunter Local Land Services took the project over, they took over the organisation of it, and they funded it and paid for it. So we just, and it was done in conjunction with the Hunter Bird Observers Club. So the whole project was done and dusted in August 2024. Now the installation of platforms such as these, I'll show a picture in a minute, is purely experimental, and it's certainly never been done in Australia for our Black-necked Stork, and so far as I could see, it hasn't been done overseas either for Black-necked Storks. It's been done for all sorts of other storks, but not for this species. So, here we go. So this is the basket of the artificial nest. It's made by Tom Ireland, was commissioned to build it. So it's a couple of metres wide and about 1 metre deep, and it was Tomago. There, in his workshop there in Hamilton. Isn't it fabulous? Looks so huge. And then in August 2024, it was put on the back of the truck, taken out to Hexham Swamp, painted in the meantime, and Hunter Local Land Services provided a helicopter and pitched it up. We couldn't believe this was happening, really. Pitched it up, dragged it. Can you see it there? Flew it over. It didn't have very far to fly. It's about a kilometre, I suppose. And then they dropped it there. Pardon me. And then the team went out there and they had to hammer all of the legs into the swamp and decorate it with bushes and things like that. So you can see who the people were without that day. So I'm just the one telling this story. I didn't walk out to the swim a single solitary time. And I want to acknowledge the many, many people who were involved in the Hexham Stork story. So there's Greg Little, Greg, where are you? And Rob Kite and Louise Williams, who trekked out in flood and heat to ban the chicks, to rescue the chicks. Judy Little, Tom Ireland, who constructed the artificial nest platform. Hunter Local Land Services, who took it over and funded it. And Chris Turing, who's from Save Our Species, he gave us his blessing. And the Hunter Bird Observers Club, of course, who provided the drones, and which made so much of the difference to the accuracy of what you could actually see in the nest and what was happening. So, and also I want to thank the many, many members of the Hunter Bird Observers Club who actually, stood there and watched that people were safe out in the swamp and that they actually came back, and also that actually reported the sightings, because that is a really important thing, is to actually report a sighting. So that's about it. Thank you very much. Yeah.